vostro sentimento della libertà, invitandolo a prendere il microfono, a prendere la parola.
Sì.
No government in the history of mankind has ever relinquished power voluntarily. The power that they have taken away from us over the past 20 months, they will never give back. They have taken away our freedom of speech. They have closed the churches. They have taken away jury trials against companies, no matter how negligent they are, no matter how reckless they are, no matter how grievous your injury. You cannot sue that company. They have taken away our property rights in the United States. They closed 1 million businesses for a year with no just compensation and no due process. They have taken away our right to be free of warrantless searches and seizures and surveillance by the government. In the United States, all of those rights are enumerated in our Bill of Rights of the United States Constitution. And among the most important of those rights is, after the right to free expression, which is gone, is the right to be able to participate in rulemaking. So when the government wants to pass a law, it has to explain, it has to publish the law, the proposed law, it has to explain the scientific basis for that law, it has to do a cost-benefit analysis of that law and explain it to the public, and then we have comments that all the public can participate, and then we have a hearing where people oppose the law, like myself, can bring in our own scientists and experts and scientific studies, and it's all transparent. All of those safeguards have been obliterated. Today, the law is what one man says it is. The top doctor in America, Anthony Fauci. 1 week. In 1 month, in March of 2020, Tony Fauci told the world masks don't work. They're scientifically worthless. 2 months later, he ordered every American to put on a mask. He did not give us any scientific study that made him change his mind. He simply told us, that's the new law, do what you're told. All of these rights that the founders of our country died for, with their sacrifice, their properties, their livelihoods, to give us the Bill of Rights. And all of those rights in 20 months have been obliterated, taken from the American people, but not just Americans. This is a global coup d'etat against liberal democracy across the planet. And all of these rights that were taken away from us, these governments said it was temporary, it was only 2 weeks, it would be over. In truth, you can all see what's happening. They are taking those rights and they will never give them back unless we make them. And the Green Pass is their coup d'etat. The Green Pass is how they consolidate their power over your lives. The Green Pass is not a public health measure. It is a tool for totalitarian control of your transportation, your bank account, your movements, every aspect of your life. And this is not a new idea. This is the same idea that they used in Germany in 1937. They issued a pass for people that they wanted to control. And when the South African apartheid government wanted to control the black population of South Africa, what was the most important thing they did? They issued a Green Pass. And I want you to ask all the people in the journalists and press who are here today, if the Green Pass is about public health, why is it being issued not by the health ministry? It's being issued by the financial ministry. Do they think that we are stupid? Because this is a way to control your money. Once you have that Green Pass and they have the digital currency, if somebody tells you do not leave Milan and you go on a trip to Bologna, your money won't work in Bologna. If the government tells you don't buy pizza, they can make it so your Green Pass won't buy pizza at a pizza store. They can control any aspect of your life. And they tell you that we need a Green Pass to make sure everybody gets vaccinated. But they admit the vaccine does not prevent transmission. The vaccine does not prevent you from getting the disease. The vaccine cannot stop the pandemic. So why do they need to get us vaccinated if the vaccine doesn't stop transmission? Now, I'm going to tell you for 2 minutes, I'm going to talk about the vaccine. People say I'm against vaccines. I'm not against vaccines. I'm only against bad vaccines. And I'm not going to tell you what Robert Kennedy thinks. I'm going to tell you what Pfizer told the United States FDA. Pfizer is the only company that has an approved vaccine in the United States. And Pfizer was supposed to have a 3-year study, but they cut it to 6 months. And then they gave vaccinations to all of the controls. So why did they do that? Why did they end the study in 6 months? Because they learned that the antibodies disappear in 6 months and the vaccine no longer provides protection. So they had to end it in 6 months. They could not do what they planned 3 years. And then they took all of their records for that 6 months and they gave them to FDA. The most important table is the table that tells you all-cause mortality. How many people died in the vaccine group? How many died in the placebo group during that 6-month period? That table is called S4. You can all look it up. Here's what the numbers say. There were 22,000 people in the vaccine group. Over 6 months, 1 died from COVID. In the placebo group, the control group, there were 22,000 people, 2 died from COVID in 6 months. So that allowed Pfizer to tell the American public that the vaccine is 100% effective because 2 is 100% of 1. Most Americans and most Italians When they hear that the vaccine is 100% effective, what they think is that if I take the vaccine, I have a 100% chance of not dying from COVID. That's not what it means. What it means is they have to give 22,000 vaccines to protect one person from dying from COVID. That means, what that means is they better make sure that the vaccine itself does not kill one person even. Because if it kills one person, then you've canceled out the entire benefit. Here's the important thing. In the vaccine group, 20 people died over 6 months from all causes. 20 people of the 22,000. In the control group, only 14 people died of 22,000. That means that if you take the vaccine, you are 48% more likely to die over the next 6 months than if you don't. These are Pfizer's numbers, not mine. Here's how the people died. In the vaccine group, in the control group, one person died of a heart attack over the 6 months. In the vaccine group, 5 people died of heart attacks over the 6 months. That means if you get the vaccine, you have a 500% risk of a fatal heart attack within 6 months. It also means
Significa anche
that for every one person who is saved from dying of COVID, the vaccine is killing 4 people from heart attacks. This is not a good public health policy. Public health is supposed to save lives. This is about control and controlling our society and controlling our children. And the only reason that people don't understand what I just said and that people still support the vaccine is one reason: the manipulation of fear. This is simple mathematics. Anybody can look it up. You look it up, you will be more scared of that vaccine than you are of COVID. But the government and the pharmaceutical companies have a method for turning off people's brains so that they can no longer do simple mathematics. And that device is fear. Fear stops us from exercising critical thinking. It allows us to believe that if we just do what we're told, that is the only way to save our lives. It's called the Stockholm Syndrome. And the captors, they lock down a whole country for a year, and people become grateful to their captors and think the only way we can leave here alive is if we have absolute obedience. I'm going to make one more point, and that's this. How many people here have heard of Event 201? So, if you haven't heard of it, you should go look at it on YouTube. Event 201 was a simulation of a coronavirus pandemic that occurred in New York City in October of 2019. We now know that COVID was circulating in Wuhan on September 12th, 2019. So a month later, there is a simulated coronavirus pandemic in New York. And the hosts, the people who came to that were the big social media companies, the media companies, and Johnson & Johnson, the biggest vaccine company, and it's hosted by 3 people. One, Bill Gates. Two, George Gao, who's the head of the Chinese CDC. And three, Avril Haines, the deputy director of the CIA.
Okay.
And Avril Haines is today the top #1 spy in the United States. She is the head of Joe Biden's National Security Agency. So she went from Event 201 to becoming the top spy in our country. That the CIA is a public health agency. It came as a surprise to me because the CIA does not do public health. The CIA does coups d'etats. Between 1947 and the year 2000, the CIA was engaged in 73 coups d'etats, most of them against democracies. 1/3 of the countries in the world. And if you look at Event 201, there was no discussion of public health. Nobody was talking about how do we get vitamin D to all the people? How do we get people to lose weight? How do we make sure they eat good food? How do we find repurposed medicines to treat people? How do we quarantine the sick? How do we preserve constitutional rights? Not a word was said about public health. Instead, what they were talking about is how do we use the pandemic as a pretext to clamp down totalitarian controls and to deconstruct democracy. They spend 1/4 of the day talking about how to make sure nobody's allowed to spread the rumor that the coronavirus pandemic is laboratory generated. This is October 2019, and they talk about how to lock down the population, how to force them to take experimental vaccines, how to make sure that Black people don't start resisting, because in our country, Blacks are very suspicious of the medical establishment, and they were deeply concerned about that resistance. And when I researched my book, what I learned was that this event, Event 201, was not a one-time occurrence. We found 20 separate pandemic simulations beginning in 2000. And the one thing they had in common, most of them, Bill Gates was involved in, Tony Fauci was involved in, but every one the CIA was involved in. The CIA wrote the script. High-level CIA officials participated in every one of those pandemic simulations. And they involved hundreds of thousands of people. They were conducted secretly. They used frontline workers, and they were training police and hospital systems and utilities in Europe, in Italy, in Germany, in Canada, Australia, all at the same time to do a response to a pandemic. But it was not a public health response. It was a response to use the pandemic for something else. So they practice again and again and again how to use the pandemic as a pretext for imposing totalitarian controls and for obliterating liberal democracy across the planet. And one of the experiments that they used, they found, called the Milgram experiment. It was a CIA experiment in 1967. And what the CIA found is if a powerful medical official orders people to do something wrong, that in something that violates their conscience, that violates their basic values, 67% of people will obey authority over their values. And 67% of the people will be hypnotized by fear into obeying a position of authority, a figure of authority. But 33% of the people will not obey. And you are the 33%.
Il 33% delle persone invece non ha obbedito e voi siete quel 33%.
And our job is to go out from here today and reach out to our brothers and sisters, the people who are still hypnotized, and tell them that we are going to fight for their freedom until they're able to fight for it themselves. And we need to reach out. We need to reach out when we leave here today to all of our brothers and sisters, the 67% who are still hypnotized. And we have to tell them that you need to love your freedom more than you're scared of a germ. This year we saw the destruction of the American Constitution. That Constitution was written by a group of people who understood that there are worse things than dying, and they put their lives on the front line, their property, their careers, their livelihoods, to fight for freedom and to fight for those rights that we have lost in the previous 20 months. And now it's our job and now it is the job of everybody in this crowd to go out and fight back, to resist, 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 resist.
E ora il dovere di ciascuno di noi è di resistere, 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 resistere.
And to reclaim our government, to reclaim our lives, to reclaim our liberty for our children, for our country, and for all future generations. And I can tell you this, I will stand side by side with you, and that if I have to die for this, I'm going to die with my boots on.